Luca Mosca's career has included Paranoia, John Wick, The Last Witch Hunter, and Skyscraper, but he's here now to talk about the incredible Amazon Prime Video series, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Luke, I know you worked on season one, but you took over as the main costume designer here for season two fully. I guess just what were your goals, I guess, going into season two and kind of like how to expand like what has been set up while also introducing a lot of new people and characters, I guess, like kind of overall, like 30,000 foot view. What were you hoping for here for this season?
Well, I had the great advantage of going into season two with a language that had already been established and with a absolutely fabulous season one. So I could only build upon that and just add and make it better if it was in any way possible. So I thought that I came from a place of real advantage. And then what we wanted to do in season two is explore more treatments and expand each civilization and community into like for a broader scope, like say orcs. We were able to add a lot of more armor details and helmets and stuff because we had the luxury of being able to sculpt them and make brand new armor. We for the elves, we also had to build a brand new army of people, and so coming up with concepts for chest plates, cuirasses, and helmets, and all the bits. So I think that season two was really about expanding, making better, and keeping the language and the grammar that we had, but just adding on.
You have mentioned like all these like different like the build and stuff of the armor and like to the orcs and elves. I guess like how much like on a typical thing like that, like how does that like I guess kind of quickly because we don't have a lot of time, but how does that like work from like designing to executing like to building that all out and making it at scale, I'd imagine, because you have so many, it just feels like a show where there's just a lot of, there's a lot of background actors and like all these different things that you have to dress and make look like as
Right, right,
good as
right.
anything else, right? Yeah.
So, talking about armor, is something that my excellent colleagues, Negar and Ernesto, will relate to. When you pull the trigger on something big and there's no way of returning, that's a major heart attack central. So with the armor, you have to design, do concept design it to illustrate it. And then once it's approved by the studio, by the showrunners, by everybody, then you say it's a go, and your armorer says, "Are you sure?" And at that point, you lie because you say, "Yes, I'm sure," but you're never sure because you would like to go back and change it. So every bit, for the army, you make a small and a large, and you make all the pieces. You sculpt them, you mold them, and you make them in multiples. And we had hundreds of pieces. And so then it needs to be painted, it needs to be broken down, it needs to be made wearable. So in the particular case of armor, it's really like how can you be at a point where you can say, yes, go, but that moment has to be reached because there is a 5 months lead time to make your pieces. A lot easier when you deal with fabric and you sew something, because if it doesn't work, you can always remake it. But again, it's probably custom dyed, custom embroidered, and distressed. So it's about really being very organized, getting approvals from the powers to be, and just doing it and trying to stay within the parameters of timing, which is the most important thing, obviously.
We mentioned like season two. Obviously, there's some new characters. Obviously, like Tom Bombadil being added to the show, and obviously a character that I think a lot of Tolkien fans have wanted to see on screen, and never, not in any of the Lord of the Rings films, obviously that we've seen prior. So I guess like what was like not like the pressure of that, but like how did you kind of like think like getting to introduce this character, I guess, and how it's gonna look? Like I
Well,
guess how did that like yeah, go ahead, like what was
Hey,
that
no, no,
like?
no. The pressure is huge because I've read the books, I know the story, I know the lore, but I know that there is an army of people out there, of viewers who have a far deeper knowledge than myself in this incredible world of Tolkien. And so it's very intimidating. So you take Tom Bombadil, which is so iconic, and you have yellow boots and a blue coat, and the specifics even about the feather. Tolkien never gives you so many details. And so how do you put Tom Bombadil in front of the camera without giving out that he is Tom Bombadil immediately? So working on the tone of yellow boots. So we had 20 pairs, 20 swatches of yellow leather in order to choose the perfect one, in how to work the blue coat. Or maybe we start the first scene without a coat and without a hat. So you get to realize who he is, but it's definitely a lot of pressure when you introduce for the first time a character who is so well known and so iconic. What a responsibility! Hopefully, it's been well received.
I think it has. No, I do. I think it has.
Yeah,
I think the
yeah,
fans are really excited about that. You mentioned like, I mean, we don't need to spoil, but obviously, like, there's another character, the stranger, like that ties into a character who is familiar, I think, to Lord
right,
of the
right,
Rings fans, obviously.
right,
And I
right,
guess
right.
like in terms of the costuming of that character, had it were there? Did you try to like, and did you try to seed maybe things in the costume that would allow people, if they go back and watch, to be like, oh, like yes, I could see that in how they're dressed or how they're kind of like costumed, I guess.
Well, I cannot take ownership of the stranger because that was a season one character, and his costume just evolved within the same um, costume. It just shrunk up in proportion and it became more elegant, more elven, in order to become from the stranger to the grand elf, right? That's a play on words. And so, big bow at the genius of Kate Hawley, who was the previous designer, the one before me. And how incredible her choice of fabric, choosing this raw silk that looks like a burlap, very heavy but very drapey, and that lends itself so well to distressing and aging and taking dyes. And yeah, putting the seeds. What I did with the stranger is just re-elaborate on the costume and reduce the volume and making it from an oversized drapey sack into something that throughout the season became smaller and taller and longer, and to eventually become the look of a wizard, of a grand elf, of a Gandalf.
Yes. Do you have like I mean like this is obviously the show is so like it seems like a huge accomplishment. I don't know like again if you watch the show it's like oh my God how is this like how did they all pull this off? I guess you have something like this season like what were you most proud of having been able to execute and like kind of succeed throughout the season I guess.
It's almost like you're asking a parent here to choose his
Yes.
favorite children, right? His favorite.
Yes.
So the parent will lie and say, "Oh, I like all my children all the same." And we know that it is not the same. So I'm not going to pick a favorite, but I can tell you that when I was working in Numenor, for example, on our Pharazôn or the Queen Muriel, I don't know, to me it felt like Atlantis at the peak. It felt like the Roman Empire on the very last day of grandeur and decadence before the fall. And so all these rich, shiny, primary colors, jewel tone, brocades and embroideries. That's what I really related to. And also being the race human maybe made me relate to it even more. It's a lot easier for me to relate to a human concept than to a 8 foot tall elf or a 4 foot tall, 3 foot tall dwarf. So Numenor is just an example. But we had, and my colleague Ernesto just said something very beautiful that I totally identify with. I cannot take credit for that. And I feel like in these whole series, I can take very little credit because every bit was made, dyed, broken down, illustrated, concepted, sculpted by someone else who is better than me at doing that, because that's what they do. And so yeah, I'm here taking accolades for a huge undertaking, a huge endeavor, but that was mine only up to a point. It really took a village and an army of great workers around me, of great assistants, stitchers, cutters, embroiderers, leather worker, 3D printers, smith, forgers, you name it. God knows how many I'm forgetting now. It was incredible. It was a huge operation.
And it was I'd say a huge success as a fan of the show. Luca Mosca, Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. You could watch all the episodes on Amazon. Thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.